the Jamaica Stock Exchange and the Financial Services Company for their efforts, the Financial Services Commission, for their efforts in launching the junior market and now the micro market. Capital raise size would be for the micro market entities. They'll be allowed to raise capital from $50 million to a maximum total of $100 million. In terms of public participation requirement, at least 20% public shareholding with at least 50 new shareholders, including the sponsor. Provisions will be made to allow the listing of micro-entities who are associated with junior and main market companies as a necessary provision to promote the role of sponsors in building stronger supply chains and facilitating wider participation in the formal economy by MSMEs. Madam Speaker, micro-market entities will be required to have an audit committee. Micro-market entities will be required to file semi-annual audited within 60 days, 12 months audited statements within 90 days, and annual reports within 120 days of the year end.
Like and share the light for me.
Will be required to transition to the junior market once they reach a capital
of $100
million. Let me also commend the main Jamaica Stock Exchange market, which was incorporated in August 1968 and began trading on February 3rd, 1969. It was launched during the administration of the Most Honorable Hugh Lawson Shearer-led government. At that time, the Honorable Edward Seaga was Minister of Finance and Planning, and he championed the establishment of a formal securities market to mobilize domestic savings, provide businesses with access to equity capital, and deepen Jamaica's financial sector. Following that, in 2009 was the launch of the junior market to further mobilize domestic savings. That was the JLP's Manor Yard, Honorable Audley Shaw. This was the stock market that might not have been had the voters not sent this government to Parliament. Madam Speaker, the micro market is not merely launching another market. We're launching a new chapter in Jamaica's economic story. Yes. Years from now, when we look back, I know that the launch of the micro market will be remembered as the day we decided that wealth creation should not be reserved for the few, but made possible for the many.
Oh, this is such a joke.
May the micro market become the birthplace.
Oh my God, this is such a joke.
Of Jamaican success stories, creating jobs, building wealth, strengthening families, and advancing our nation, one entrepreneur, one investor, and one bold idea at a time.
One cocoa basket government is now. So it will take forever for real wealth happening now. Them not ready Jamaica. This is a joke.
Responding is the member from St. Andrew South, East, South.
Come to PNP, because we know.
Madam Speaker, we are on record when this idea came up as supporting the launch of a micro stock exchange.
You see what they like?
So we have no issue and actually support this development because we believe access to capital is the greatest inhibitor of growth, particularly for micro enterprises. But there's a lot more the government needs to do if it intends to catalyze and achieve growth in the MSME sector. And for those MSMEs, and I put emphasis on the M and the S, access to capital remains the challenge. Now, when we look at the programs that are offered by the government of Jamaica, primarily through the Development Bank of Jamaica, it is still too difficult for MSMEs to access these programs, which give them the technical assistance, for example, to put their financial statements together, their balance sheets, etc., which would be prerequisites for them, for example, to be on a micro stock exchange. We have technical assistance programs that require
Go on,
MSMEs
splash the G.
138 questions to qualify for a grant. So we need to simplify the process, and we need to be in a position where we don't come back to this house and have DBJ funds unspent because the MSMEs cannot access the money. So we need to fix that. After 7 years, the government has finally taken some steps to implement the set aside that was promised in the budget for procurement for MSMEs. Grand announcement 7 years ago. I'm seeing some steps now. But I'd like the minister to give us a specific timetable as to when it will be implemented.
Hello,
Because
somebody.
again, the success of
Respect.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
government issued as to when it will be implemented. Because again, the success of these MSMEs will depend on their ability to access government issued contracts. The government is the largest player in the market. We all agree that there should be a set aside, but without the steps taken to implement this, again, our MSMEs will languish. So, Madam Speaker, again, we don't have any issue with what is being implemented, and we have been on record as saying we support a micro stock exchange. But I'm calling on the government to do more within the power of the government on the issue of technical assistance and funding for the MSMEs and ensuring that the set aside for procurement is implemented in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, member.
Wanna see how she lie? Wanna see how them lie? See how no truth na there na the labor right them? Cause the big lie what she tell is that if it wasn't for the JLP, this thing would not, like say the PMP never support progress, you know. Lie like sin Jamaica.
Because in different areas of the economy and the law, there are categorizations of small, medium, and micro. And I'm wondering, given the amounts that you're saying should be raised by micro and small, how would micro enterprises be categorized for this purpose? The other question I have relates to the stock market generally. The Jamaican stock market has been in the doldrums for at least 5 years. And we're coming from the last full year of the Porsche since the Miller administration, where Jamaica had the best stock market performance in the world.
Facts.
And that was an outstanding achievement.
Facts.
And now we've seen years of anemic performance for the stock market. And I'm wondering what the government plans to do to reinvigorate interest in the equity market, given the long period in which the Jamaican equities market has been languishing with poor performance and limited investor interest. Those are my two questions.
Are there any other questions?
Hey, wanna see how Market G's juke them with the truth?
Manchester South? Manchester Southern, sorry. Are there any others? So just a reminder, when the minister is asked to respond, that's the end of questions. Member from Manchester Southern, Minister, after which you will respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker. Minister, you point out to the fact that in this initiative, at least in the first instance, will potentially benefit 25 companies already identified to a maximum of 100 million each. So that's about 2.5 billion in capital potentially at the top end to be raised. But there are many times more than that amount now already raised by small and medium and large entrepreneurs in Jamaica. Or I wouldn't say large, small and medium entrepreneurs that's invested in the short-term rental market, which you announced.
Tap up the screen, my side. Make we get to 50K like somebody,
There
please.
is no clarity on how it will be implemented, although there is only 9 months remaining.
They are 10 minutes
heard
now.
you were meeting with the GHTA recently to clarify for them, but fine for the big hotels, but the thousands of investors in the short-term rental market are still left in limbo, and they represent a much bigger amount of capital than we're talking about with this micro stock market.
Minister?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll take the first question from the member from St. Andrew Southeast in terms of the steps to implement the set-aside procurement. We've just begun that process, member. The first thing to be done is for the entities to identify themselves. They have to come forward. They have to register so that we know who they are in order to get them set up on the procurement system. And that work is on in earnest. We started out in Montego Bay this week in terms of helping the firms to register. We will be going around the island helping companies to get on to the electronic platform. We will also ensure that within each ministry, we properly bring the procuring officers up to speed, make them become knowledgeable, because we are serious about the set-aside. We're going to ensure that they have the tools, that they have no excuse. They can't say, we don't know who these companies are, or they're not properly identified, because that will be done for them through the procurement system that we have. And so, yes, will it start happening tomorrow? Maybe not tomorrow, but as we go around the island with these workshops, we will begin to see the SMEs register on the system, and alongside training the procuring officers internally, we'll begin to see a scaling up of this across the ministries. Right, so in terms of the implementation that has begun, companies are registering. We're having companies put their information on the system. So if you're asking when will it be in full bloom, I would expect that in the next 6 to 8 months, it should be in full bloom, because the companies are excited about this opportunity that's presented for them. In terms of the other question, how will the companies be speaking to the micro market? How will companies be categorized for this? First of all, the first criteria would be their capital raising threshold and their operational maturity. Again, we want companies that will be successful once they go on the market. That is why the JSC is also having the sandbox, so that companies that are interested, but they might not be at the operational maturity just yet, they might not have everything in place, they'll be able to use the sandbox to really see how it works before they're able to graduate into the micro market. There's another question about no clarity. There will be clarity. That is why we gave time before implementation of the measure that was tabled in Parliament, member. On the stock market. So I would have to get that information from DBJ as to what is their capabilities right now. How can they further scale up that program? And I don't have the answer right here as to their go forward, but I know that there is a need for greater levels of technical assistance to companies on a lot of different fronts, and we are willing to support that with more resources going forward.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, we move to the next statement that
Members,
I will
as we await the orderly, please make welcome to his feet for statement by Minister or House Leader and Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining. Members?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for decades, Alpat has been one of the anchors of the Jamaican mining sector and one of the most important economic engines in Western Jamaica. Yes, it will be distributed. No. Yeah, I said it in the soft copy. Apologies, Madam Speaker, the copy should have been sent.
So now him not ready for Parliament, you know. Him not ready for Parliament because I'm supposed to send it soft or hard copy for whatever it is him talk about so the man him can formulate them questions. You understand? That is the right procedure. And of them things we are talking about. I know him a waste time.
All right, so as the members, it will be provided in short order. And I'll send you a WhatsApp member already. Its operations have supported generations of workers, contractors, transport operators, small businesses and families across many communities, including Nain, Milesville, Junction, Malvern, Santa Cruz, Littis, and parts of southeastern St. Elizabeth and southern Manchester. Madam Speaker, when Alpat operates, the impact is felt far beyond the gates of the refinery. Shops benefit, transport operators benefit, service providers benefit, farmers and small businesses benefit, and entire communities benefit from the economic activity generated by its operation. It is for this reason that the reopening of Alpat is a central priority for this government and formed a major part of my trip to China recently. Madam Speaker, as members of this Honorable House will recall, Jikwon Iron and Steel Company, more commonly known as JISCO, acquired Alpat in 2017.
This is the type of faceless animated videos that helped us grow our channel.
And members of this Honorable House will recall, Jikwon Iron and Steel Company, more commonly known as JISCO, acquired Alpat in 2017 and restarted operations after several years of closure. During that period, JISCO invested approximately US $360 million into the operation and created employment for approximately 1,000 Jamaicans, including direct employees and contractors, bringing renewed economic activity to the communities across that region. However, in 2019, operations were suspended. The impact of the suspension was significant, particularly for the workers, families, and businesses that had come to depend on the refinery. The suspension was further complicated by the COVID-19 pandemic, changing global market conditions, and wider challenges facing the aluminum industry. Madam Speaker, over the last 5 years, JISCO has undertaken a comprehensive feasibility process to determine the most viable pathway to return Alpat to full operation. JISCO's technical teams assessed the existing plant, examined the investment required, reviewed modern technologies, and visited other jurisdictions to study approaches being used internationally to improve efficiency, reduce costs, and modernize alumina production. Following that process, Madam Speaker, JISCO has now determined the path forward for the reopening and modernization of Alpat. Madam Speaker, as part of this process, our engagement in China was focused on direct discussions with the key decision makers responsible for the future of Alpat. The delegation met with the leadership of JISCO to review the redevelopment plans, examine the remaining requirements for implementation, and discuss the steps necessary to return the refinery to productive operation. Madam Speaker, I had the opportunity to tour JISCO's industrial operations, including their aluminum refinery and steel smelting facilities. These visits provided first-hand insight into the scale of JISCO's operations, the technology being utilized, and the approach being taken to modern industrial production. Importantly, I was able to meet members with the board of directors of the GISCO Group, including the chairman of the group. And in those discussions, GISCO reaffirmed that Alpart remains a strategic investment opportunity and forms an important part of the company's wider international growth and recapitalization strategy. Madam Speaker, I express Jamaica's appreciation for the investment that has already been made, but I was equally clear about the disappointment and frustration experienced by the workers, the communities, the stakeholders who have been waiting for years for the restart of the operations of Alpart. For the people of St. Elizabeth and surrounding communities, Alpart is tied to generations of work, enterprise, and opportunity. A matter that the member and my state minister from Southeast St. Elizabeth is very familiar with, having been the longest serving member on the Alpart Community Council. It has supported families, sustained businesses, and contributed to the economic life of those communities. Madam Speaker, as a part of the process, we also directly engage with the governor of the Gansu province and his team. It is important to understand, Madam Speaker, that GISCO is a state-owned enterprise.
Make we get the likes up, guys.
Gansu province.
Get the likes up, get the likes up. 55% of you is not liking the video or following me. That's how TikTok tell me. So I'm asking you guys to double tap up the screen, please and thanks. All right.
Being able to engage them directly was critical in relation to our discussions regarding Alpart. During our discussions, with the governor, we reinforced the importance of Alpart reopening. We emphasized the need for continued support to move the modernization program forward, and we also spoke about deeper relations in relation to Jamaica. I'm pleased to report, members, that the governor gave assurances that efforts will be made to facilitate the timely reopening of Alpart and encourage GISCO to move expeditiously towards restarting operations, recognizing the importance of the project to Jamaica's economic development and the continued partnership between Jamaica and the Gansu province. Madam Speaker, arising from those engagements, GISCO has now written to me and has confirmed that following our visit and its extensive feasibility process, it will proceed with a two-phase modernization program for the Alpart refinery. Madam Speaker, the objective is to restore Alpart as a modern, competitive operation and a major player in global alumina production. GISCO's redevelopment plan is designed to return the refinery to a production capacity of approximately 2 million tons of alumina annually, implemented in two phases, with phase 1 targeting 1 million tons per year and phase 2 adding a further 1 million tons. Phase 1 represents an investment of approximately US $490 million and will focus on returning the facility to operation using newer, cleaner, and more efficient technologies. This investment will include the modernization of major operational systems, the upgrading of the plant infrastructure, the redevelopment of power generation facilities, the implementation of dry stacking technology for residue management, and the rehabilitation of the critical rail and port infrastructure. The company has committed to making every effort to satisfy the necessary preconditions to allow construction activities to commence before the end of this year, with the objective of an official launch before June 2027. The project in phase 1 will take 20 months to completion. Madam Speaker, the global alumina industry has changed, and the future of Alpart requires an operation that's more efficient, sustainable, and positioned to compete internationally. That is why in the modernization plan, it includes the introduction of advanced technologies and a 5 megawatt photovoltaic and energy storage hybrid system, positioning Alpart as a green, low-carbon demonstration project. The plan in phase
Yeah,
one
man.
also includes
If
the
fan-
rehabilitation
if
of the
fanatics
hurricane
them-
damaged Port
They have
Kaiser,
problem with my green shirt.
recognizing that the success of the refinery
If you don't want me burn up a green shirt and I have to buy me 5 shirt,
shed operation.
5 dark shirt.
Madam Speaker, the
We
good
gonna-
news is
I will
work
give
has
you
already
guys the
begun
USA address for ship it down here. You
GISCO has
remember
invested
about
approximately US $8 million in new
TikTok I hungry reason I put on this because you're not gonna able to see the chat. You don't notice I be a white man here? That is it.
arrived at Kingston
Time at you now.
on the 30th of May and have now been commissioned. The state
Oh, you
minister
can't go
was
and lose
at
off
the
from me, I don't want. I
commissioning,
don't
and they are
business.
now
And
out
this
in
is
the
for you lose off
field
from me,
leading
that
the
your business.
reclamation of mine-out lands,
You can't
which
gas
has
me up.
been a long-standing challenge
Me no
that
do
they are now
colors, no
working
man. Me
on.
no gang member, you know.
We have also advanced
You
discussions
remember
on the
God.
long-standing issue of land titles
Me no
for
do
relocated
colours.
residents. GISCO has advised that approximately
That I want to know, can't get me involved in that. Me no
1,233
do
titles
colours.
were
I'm not a
required,
gang member.
with approximately 350
That-
already
yeah, policy me
completed.
deal with.
We're going to do another
Once
50
PMP are deal with the
during
right
the course
policy,
of this
and then
year,
me I work
and then
with.
there's going to be an acceleration of
Oh,
the
yeah,
project
Brazilian fan, but
utilizing
you
the
not like
systematic
green and
land
Brazil have green in
titling
them colour.
initiative.
What could you? What I want
Madam
is
Speaker,
you're
securing
confused, man.
adequate bauxite reserves was also a critical part
fully
of the
confused.
discussion. GISCO has indicated that approximately
Germany on my
149 million tons of bauxite reserves are associated with the lands currently being pursued, which will support
to
the
market G, a
long-term
Brazilian
viability
fan.
of the
A market
refinery
G, a comrade. So what you say?
So, Madam Speaker, in closing,
What are you
I'm very happy that our discussions in China have led to some positive
Your
outcomes.
meds is very silly,
Jamaica
man.
values the
Grow up.
partnership with GISCO, but we also recognize the urgency
Grow up.
of action. After years of uncertainty, there is now renewed commitment, a defined
people are run
modernization
joke, there's
program,
something they
a
want,
clearer
but when they get
pathway
serious,
towards returning
that is
this
silly.
important facility to
Grow up.
productive operation. Madam Speaker, this government made a commitment to the people of Jamaica that we would pursue every avenue to see Alpart return to operation. We went to China, we engaged decision makers, we secured a clear path forward, and we are closer now more than ever before to seeing the reopening of Alpart, to once again drive growth, jobs, and opportunity for our people. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The member from Manchester Northwest will respond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And let me say I hope that the minister had a safe trip, and I see that he is back. But, Madam Speaker, we have been hearing these timelines for a number of years now.
That's why I wonder where you talk about my green,
in the
green there,
minister's
Jamaica
own
flag.
presentation, statement to the House.
Yeah, make
It is
my
over
point.
5 years now that the plant
Yeah,
has
make
been
my point.
closed. And
You
we have
seriously
heard
making my
missed
point.
announcement dates over and over again. And I just want to know what will make
Think
it
what you
different
say
this
before you say
time.
it, man.
Because if it is just a satisfaction that GISCO has sent 2 large earth movers here, bulldozers as the minister described them, as easy as they send them, they can send them back out.
That's right.
And they can be parked.
That's right.
But, Madam Speaker, I mean, we on this side hope that this time around that GISCO will act on the commitment that they have made. But I want to ask the minister, if GISCO misses the next deadline that they have committed to, and I would have hoped that it wouldn't have taken the minister and the administration 5 years to really hold GISCO to book on this one. But what action will be taken by the administration if GISCO misses the next deadline? Because we have been getting commitments from them over the last 5 years.
Whoa.
Minister,
Whoa.
I think that you have been a little bit soft on the
I got a good
from them over the last 5 years. Minister, I think that you have been a little bit soft on the
the industry itself, not just GISCO, but the industry itself when it comes to land reclamation and land titling. It is something that I think that we have discussed, not only in this last sectoral presentation, but I remember my sectoral presentation last year, the whole issue of land titling and land reclamation, and you made a commitment that you would deal with the issue, especially of land reclamation, and that you would come to the House with some amendments to the legislation that governs it in dealing with the issue of land reclamation. But the main issue is what will be the action of the administration if GISCO misses the next deadline. And, you know, they say better late than never. But I am happy to know that the minister decided to go to China in this instance to get a commitment. But I am not firm that this commitment holds any water until we actually see some action taking place at GISCO. So, Minister, my few words on that, but just the issue on what will the action be next is one that I would love to hear from you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Question from Manchester Southern. Any other members with questions? Any other? Okay. So next will be the member from Kingston East and Port Royal, and finally the member from Clarendon Western, after which the minister will respond. Oh, call him first. So Manchester, the first would be Manchester Southern, and then Kingston East and Port Royal, and then finally Clarendon Southwest. Oh, your mic was on first.
Uno hear how Juliet come today? Uno hear how Juliet come today and talk like she a smarty? Uno better observe what go on here.
Minister.
Pressure around here.
You mentioned in your speech that Manchester Southern is one of the constituencies that's most affected by, could you help me with it? Madam Speaker, this one doesn't speak very well. Thank you. You mentioned in your statement, Minister, that Manchester Southern is one of the constituencies that has been most affected by Alpart's mining and refining activities and related activities. And in particular, I welcome the fact that we may see some action in terms of the accelerated reclamation of mined out lands, because I think this applies almost exclusively to the Manchester Plateau and Southern Manchester. When you answered questions in this House about 6 to 9 months ago related to Jamalco, and they are not observing the law in terms of reclaiming pits within the time provided, you said you had a zero tolerance for non-compliance with the time set out for reclamation, and that your mining department had assessed Jamalco for fines. I don't remember the figure off the top of my head, but there were substantial fines. Can you give an update on whether those fines have been applied? Question one. Secondly, can you give an update on what is the status of fines for Alpart, who have much older
mama son.
mines that have not been
She get a good talking to, you know,
or
and she see what
rehabilitated?
go on social media.
And
She have
can
to
you give
adjust
an
herself.
update on that?
She expose herself.
Third is with respect to the 1,233 titles that are required.
I wonder which report I come
Again, Minister, you would understand that perhaps the lion's share of those titles relate to residents of South Manchester. So could you give, and I don't necessarily, I'm not asking you for details here, but could you commit to send the Member of Parliament in writing the areas for which is 350 already completed titles relate to, and a schedule for the balance of the titles. And finally, Minister, this 149 million tons of additional bauxite reserves that are associated with lands being pursued. Could you say if any of those lands are in southern Manchester? Thank you.
Only a question that
Member from Port Royal, Eastern Port Royal.
Minister, I have a few questions. Firstly, are there any tax concessions granted to GISCO for the investment that they are committing to do, and if you could provide details
where's your house, Bandy?
On any such tax concession. There has been a problem with dust in the southeast St. Elizabeth constituency. Have you reached an accommodation with GISCO to resolve that dust problem for the people of that area? You mentioned that there were two D11s that were imported. My understanding is that the D11s are for land reclamation and not mining. So if you could just clarify that. Finally, did you reach any accommodation in relation to the use of the waste, the residue, for further processing? You have mentioned that you are committed to processing for rare earth. Was that a part of the discussions that you had? And finally, in relation to the 149 million tons, could you say if additional mining lands have been allocated and if these are anywhere near the cockpit country?
Minister, hold on. You have one other member before, and that's a member from Clarendon Southwest.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Minister, in respect of the outstanding titles, you mentioned some 350 delivered, total of 1,200 in total. The question, Minister, is why would you consider systematic registration as opposed to vesting orders? The vesting orders, as we know, is provided for under the Bauxite Alumina Industry Special Provisions Act, and it is deliberately in place to fast-track delivery of titles. So could you explain the rationale for choosing that route as opposed to vesting orders? Bearing in mind, Minister, that there are several communities, not only in Manchester, but also in Clarendon, that have been resettled and have thousands of outstanding titles on top of these outstanding titles. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. I'll start from Clarendon Southwestern and work my way back to the opposition spokesperson. So members, not either or. We are using vested orders as right now. In fact, I signed some last week, and we have been using vesting orders for a little while now. But the sort of speed that I thought the vested orders would have brought has not really materialized, right? Because there are still some challenges. So we've met with the companies, and we would only use systematic where it would speed it up, right? Clearly, systematic does allow us to sometimes cover a larger area, right? And because the boundaries are already well defined in these areas, the thinking is that it may allow us to move faster on a larger scale. But we're not abandoning the vesting order system. We're still doing it now. What we're trying to see is how can we speed up? Because again, as you know, a number of these people have been waiting on their titles for decades, for generations. But good question. We'll continue on that trajectory. To the member from Kids Studies Third and Port Royal, a couple of questions. So no, there is no contemplation of any bauxite mining in the cockpit country or close to the cockpit country at all. And as of this moment, no new lands have been ascribed or allocated to Alpat, right? They have identified areas in Manchester, and not in Manchester Southern, in more Manchester Northern. They have identified areas that they may be interested in that are proximal to where they already operate, right? Some of those areas, however, are already under mining leases, right? So they would have to go through a process if they are to take those lands. But as it is now, there's no new allocation, and definitely the cockpit country will not be contemplated at all. We had no discussions regarding rare earths or the use of waste. However, as you are aware, there is a local company that does have a...
Want to score big this summer? Domino's has you covered. Buy a large one-topping pizza and get a second...
As the country will not be contemplated at all. We had no discussions regarding rare earths or the use of waste. However, as you are aware, there is a local company that does have an exploratory license in relation to rare earths across a number of the waste spots, including Alpat's waste spot. And that company has been in discussion with the various companies like Alpat, like Jabalco, and the ministry in relation to rare earths and rare earths development. The bulldozers are for land reclamation, and it's in keeping with what the member from South Manchester indicated. We have instituted a zero tolerance approach. Now, the zero tolerance approach, as I said, is zero tolerance from where I've started, right? Because it would be very difficult. A number of the companies would have entered into arrangements, would have gotten concessions in the past from various ministers. So what I have said to the companies, and literally the Commissioner of Mines wrote to them to draw a line in the sand, to say, as of all your pits must be completed within the time frame prescribed, right? I will, however, and I'm coming into your question, so let me just finish. In relation to the dust, a year and a half ago, GISCO implemented a system that has almost practically fixed the dust issue, right? To be honest, we have gone through now 2 dry spells with no complaints. And I had to commend them when I went there. I had commended the local team. They brought in some covering. So if you go into the Mansville area now, what used to be the waste pond is now covered with almost like a green shade cloth that acts as holding down the dust, right? We've been through 2 droughts. We're hoping it continues to hold. I have said to them it appears because of when you have to keep replenishing the covering, but so far we haven't had any challenge. So that's a plus. GISCO was... There were concessions that were granted to GISCO upon the investment, right? A number of those concessions, they were not able to utilize because it had stopped, right? So at the time period when they stopped the operations, they basically had a 5-year concession. I can't tell you the details, but I can provide that information, right? And clearly, it is intended that, considering that they did not utilize that they would be able to utilize that in getting the plant back up and running. And that's important. In relation to South Manchester, so definitely I will send the details in writing regarding the titles, right?
Hey,
I said the 350 that have already been given out, and also what's the sort of schedule. Right?
You don't miss me.
One of the things that we discuss with GISCO is to ensure that funds are allocated for this, so that as they move through the rebuilding, they are accelerating the pace of getting the titles. Because I've said to them quite frankly, one, it's their responsibility, but also in relation to goodwill, it would go a far way in the operations of the company. So I will provide that. I wouldn't have the information in relation to the fines, but I will check, right? I know some letters were sent out after drawing the line in the sand, and I will see how that went. But definitely in relation to Manchester Southern, I think you have seen that reclamation has started. Yes, there was a, well, you know, long-standing, and those bulldozers are going to speed up the pace in Manchester Southern. And clearly, as I mentioned, not only on some of the challenges, but once we get Alpart back up and running, Manchester Southern will be a big beneficiary. He used to provide a lot of the workers for the plant, and I know that has really taken a toll, quite frankly, on the communities in the area. The opposition spokesperson, it's a very good question, and it is true that there have been time frames in the past, right? We had a very, and I do the last year one, we had a very frank discussion with GISCO. And let me start with the most recent time frame. The most recent time frame is that they had indicated that they would start the reconstruction, rehabilitation phase late last year, December of 2026. They had said they were going to do three things. They were going to do a comprehensive asset verification, which they would hire about 300 people. They were going to restart land reclamation because they had finished land reclamation, as they were doing any land reclamation, and that they were going to start exploring again, because it's very important that they get back out there to see where the quality of bauxite in the areas, and they would start the phase reopening. In fairness to GISCO, they did 3 out of the 4. Right? So they started the land reclamation, they hired about 300 people for the asset verification, right? And they started the exploration. And people will tell you, they saw people in and around their homes testing soil, etc., etc. They had come back to us in December and said, with the damage done to Port Kaiser from Hurricane Melissa, they needed to rescope the reopening. It was at that time I felt it was critical that we engage at the highest level. Because as you know, there is a bureaucratic process to get approval. So they have to go to the company and then they have to go to the governor. And that's why we met with the governor as well. So I have been back now probably about 2 months. Excuse me. But I waited until I got their confirmation in writing in relation to their timelines and what they plan to do. So we don't have that. The question is, what action can we take? 2 things. Well, clearly, GISCO would have purchased Alpart. So I think we have to be clear about that. That was a company-to-company transaction. They own the plant. However, the plant can't operate without reserves, without mining leases, and without mining licenses. And those still lay in the purview of the Minister of Mining and of the government. And I have been very clear with them. The truth is, we are now at a stage where I'm very sure other companies are very interested in existing mining leases. That's the stage of our bauxite industry. So they appreciate that if they don't act now, they may be unable to act at any other time. So we do have some levers that we can pull. And I disagree with you wholeheartedly. I think the record will show that the most reclamation and the speed of the reclamation has increased under our stewardship. I think the record will show that the speed of the land titling has increased under our stewardship, right? We have actually been a lot tougher on those items than before, right? And we're seeing the benefits. With that said, it's a long road to go, because unfortunately, most of these titles, they are not new. In fact, since I've been minister, no community has been relocated for bauxite mining. All of these relocations happened decades ago. So while a lot is happening now, we have a lot to catch up on. So with that said, members, I know that we all want to see the action. And this announcement, while I'm very happy for it, I'll be happier when Minister Whittle and I and the Prime Minister can go to the formal launch of the reopening of Alpa. And I think all of us here should come. That is when we will again see. Before the next, I will say that. Anyway, thank you, members.
Thank you, Minister. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House are the following: Annual Report of the Casino Gaming Commission for the financial year 2022-2023 and its Ministry Paper numbered 44 of 2026 titled Casino Gaming Commission Annual Report for the year ended March 31, 2023. Annual Report of the Casino Gaming Commission for the financial year 2023-2024 and its related Ministry Paper numbered 45 of 2026 titled Casino Gaming Commission Annual Report for the year ended March 31, 2024.
So we can get to 50K.
Annual Report of the Integrity Commission for the financial year 2025-2026.
Should have them more likes than that, you know?
The Insurance Amendment Regulations 2026 under the Insurance Act. The Pension Superannuation Funds and Retirement Schemes Investment Amendment Regulations 2026 and its resolution under the Pension Superannuation Funds and Retirement Schemes Act. Integrity Commission's investigation report into concerns that Ms. Janet Cunningham, a Chief Internal Auditor, formerly employed to the Cannabis Licensing Authority, failed to file her statutory declaration with the Commission for the year 2023 contrary to law and notice of its indicative rulings. Integrity Commission's investigation report into concerns that Ms. Octavia Ming Campbell, a procurement officer formerly employed to the Cannabis Licensing Authority, failed to file her statutory declaration with the Commission for the year 2023 contrary to law and notice of its indicative ruling. Auditor General's Department certified appropriation accounts under Head 20011 Recurrent Accountant General's Department for the year 2016-2017, Head 2000 Ministry of Finance and the Public Service for the year 2022-2023, Head 20000 Recurrent Ministry of Finance and the Public Service 2022-2023, and finally Head 56000C Capital for the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology 2022-2023. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. I'll start with the exemption motion. Okay, you may go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice.
Montego Bay moves with its.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With these notices of motions given orally, I'll start with the exemption motion. Okay, you may go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I'll move the following motion. The Pension, Superannuation Funds and Retirement Schemes Investment Amendment Regulations 2026 Resolution.
Hi, Justin.
Whereas Section 58(1) of the Pension, Superannuation Funds and Retirement Schemes Act provides that the Financial Services Commission may, with the approval of the Minister, make regulations providing for such matters as may be necessary or expedient for the purposes of the Act, and without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing. The regulations may contain provisions in relation to all or any of the following. A. Registers to be kept for the purposes of the Act. B. Provisions to be contained in a trust deed and plan rules or master trust deed. C, any other matter required by the Act to be prescribed. And whereas Section 58(2) of the Act provides that regulations made under Section 58(1) shall be subject to affirmative resolution. And whereas the Financial Service Commission, with approval of the Minister on the first day of July 2026, made the pensions, superannuation funds, and retirement schemes investment amendment regulations 2026. And whereas
like and share the live on my side
that the pensions, superannuation funds, and retirement schemes investment amendment regulation 2026 be affirmed. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this Honorable House as follows. This resolution may be cited as the Pensions, Superannuation Funds, and Retirement Schemes Investment Amendment Regulations 2026 Resolution. To the Pensions, Superannuation Funds, and Retirement Schemes Investment Amendment Regulations 2026, which were laid on the table of the House on the 7th day of July,
so my best man
2026, are affirmed. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
What's up, Diane? Richard Bennett, big up.
Thank you, Minister. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion.
Want to see annual report.
Whereas subsection 1G of section 41 of the Constitution of Jamaica requires a member of this Honorable House of Representatives to vacate his seat if any firm in which he is a partner or any company of which he is a director or manager becomes a party to any contract with the government of Jamaica for or on account of the public service, or if he becomes a partner in a firm or a director or manager of a company which is a party to any such contract. And whereas the Member of Parliament for Manchester Southern is a shareholder and or director and or manager at Proven Group Limited, its subsidiaries and associated companies. And whereas these entities may from time to time enter into contracts with the government of Jamaica and its affiliated agencies, and whereas the member has disclosed his interest in these entities, be it resolved that this motion be referred to the Ethics Committee of the House of Representatives for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Be resolved that the Insurance Amendment Regulations 2026, which were laid on the table of the House on the 7th day of July 2026, be referred to the Regulations Committee of the House for consideration and report. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move the following motion. Be it resolved that with reference to the resolution approved by this Honorable House on October 21, 2025, appointing an internal and external affairs committee, that the name Zulika Jess be removed from the membership of the committee, and that the name Yvonne Shaw be substituted therefore. Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Thank you, House Leader. Oh, yes. Questions and answers to questions. Time being.
I am Coley, what's up?
Mr. Barbara, time being 3:42. I now move that the House be allowed to answer questions at this time.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Member Paula?
Madam Speaker, I just got a memo from the Minister of Energy, who is quite appropriately recognized that I need to give approval. He is not well, and he therefore has promised to have the questions answered next week. So as a reasonable member, I am acceding to his request.
Darrell Vaz is
Motions
not
that
well.
will
Martha,
be made
what's
at the
up?
commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, public business, House Leader.
Madam Speaker, firstly, let me join in welcoming the members of the Sam Sharp Teachers College, a wonderful educational institution, and produced some excellent teachers. Excellent teachers. I see Member Malahoo Fort beaming with pride. Yes, very, very good institution. And I see Member Bartlett claiming them as his children, his students. But wonderful institution. I'm very happy that they're here and they would have been able to see some of the proceedings. We're not finished, but now we're in public business, which is normally the time that I would have to give my remarks. I will also just welcome Member Malahoo Fort back to the House. I know we have all shared our condolences, but it's really good to have her back. And we continue to pray for your strength in these difficult times. I know, but she moved so quickly. All right, in public business, Madam Speaker, we're going to take our motions. We have some motions that when I'll allow the Minister of Finance to go first, then I'll take my you have a motion in public business, or I'll take my motions then. And then we're going to conclude the debate on the Mediation Act. So I know the Minister of Justice opened the debate, and I'm very sure there are members who want to participate. So allow me first to take these motions in public business. So, Madam Speaker, I now ask for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, those of which I gave earlier, in relation to the Internal and External Affairs Committee and the substitution of members.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the motion be approved.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the notice in relation to the insurance amendment regulations being referred to the regulations committee.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the motion be approved.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, finally, I move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion in relation to the referral to the Ethics Committee for the Member of Parliament for Manchester Southern, notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I now move that the motion, those of which I gave earlier, be approved.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, we will now continue the debate around the Mediation Act.
No, Minister would have opened already.
Yes.
So, Minister,
we'll now continue.
It will be a continuation. House Leader, do you have a listing of persons who have indicated they would like to contribute?
I know on our side, Member Tufton, the Minister of Health, and Member Dalrymple Filbert plans to contribute to the debate. And Member Zulika Jess, the leader of the opposition, plans to contribute. So I don't know if Member Jess wants to start us off since the last presentation. Okay. Minister of Health.
We will first take
No, man,
rising to the
just
stage
a
to make
move from one
contribution
committee.
to this debate. The Minister of Health and Wellness.
No, man, the
Minister
IC
Tufton,
report then
you
table,
turn your
man.
mic on, please. Make him welcome.
A two-person from the some weed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker,
weed committee.
colleagues. Madam Speaker,
License committee.
this bill,
They name file them
the Mediation Act
they name file them statutory
2026,
declaration.
is very
Annual report be
important
interested in that.
from a health and wellness perspective.
Well, may I
And
check
it
out
is
the
in
report
that
this
context that I rise to support the public health imperatives and offer.
With Base 44, a simple sentence becomes your website.
To support the public health imperatives and offer full support, and indeed to commend the Minister and Minister of State and his team for putting this bill together and advancing it in this House.
Yeah, man.
I would like to reference in making the point and
when they hear the
supporting
lady
the bill,
read, say the report and
violence,
table.
particularly
That is it.
violence
Now we
against
can go up on the
women,
website and go look for
but
yourself
generally violence
and read
within our
it.
society.
Because once the table in the
Jamaica
parliament,
is a high
you can go up
trauma
on the
society,
website and read it for yourself.
and a lot of it is influenced with our behavior,
while
Madam
listening
Speaker,
parliament.
colleagues.
Want to
And
go on the annual
unfortunately,
report.
much of the cases we see in accident and emergency,
Why them
which
take so long
leads
to table it?
doctors and nurses and other health practitioners' attention, is caused by decisions that we make, and in some instances, decisions that are against each other. We see some of this, Madam Speaker, through police reports. We see some through signs, whether it is physical, mental, or psychological. But in all cases, more often than not, the solution lies with some sort of public health intervention. While acts of domestic violence often occur behind closed doors, there are consequences that extend far beyond the home, affecting families, communities, of course, health services,
My side, help me
workplace,
out.
and the
Play a
justice
match.
system. On a
Let's
typical
play a match.
week, anywhere in Jamaica, in our A&E or in some doctor's office, there is some
Hello, let's
treatment
play a
being
match.
meted out
All right, here we
because
go.
of this type of antisocial behavior.
Come
And the
through
reason
my
why
side.
this bill is important, Mr. Speaker, is because these issues don't just occur.
Come
They
through
start
my side.
sometimes
Tap up the screen
as
there
a
for me.
small,
Let's go. Wake
simple
up. Get the tops up. Get
disagreement.
the tops up.
And because of one reason or another,
Yes, your husband
they
wants some
escalate.
mango.
And
You
they escalate, leading to the injuries that are
Double
as a
tap up the
result
screen,
of
my side. Double tap up the
domestic
screen.
violence. So what may be a minor disagreement, whether it is over possession, intimate relationships, relationships generally, children, or otherwise, these unresolved disputes do escalate, and that's the history, unfortunately, of our community and our country. And the data supports that. In 2024, a total of 3,081 injuries were recorded through the Jamaica Injury Surveillance System, and of these, almost 7,000 were violence-related injuries. Particularly concerning are the findings related to women, and I want to reference that. In 2024, just under 2,000 cases of violence against women were treated at a hospital somewhere in our country, or health center, meaning the attention that a doctor or nurse has to mete out, not to mention the pain and the suffering that those individuals, in this case, our women, have to suffer. And the data is also supporting that the ages between 18 and 40 account for some 74% of these cases. Because of how the bill is structured, it allows an opportunity to deal with these issues early at the level of the community, whether through community leaders,
through the mechanism that is created by this bill, hopefully to become law, to avoid these circumstances before they escalate, leading to a strain on the health system and the pain and the suffering which results.
2 minutes to go.
Madam Speaker.
2 minutes and 40 seconds to go.
Men are impacted too. The 2024 survey from the Jamaica Injury Surveillance System supports this fact. Some 2,593 violence-related injury among men,
now I've sent some gift
and almost 35% of that is represented through intimate partner relationships. In the case of women,
all right,
it's higher.
I get the tops them up.
It represents some
50K likes today.
74%, almost 75%.
Up the screen faster.
So men are impacted like women, but women are more impacted, and it's worth mentioning. Women are the backbone of our society, our communities, and our families. And as a government, we must do what is necessary to protect them and to give them the support that is necessary. Madam Speaker, in public health, therefore, we support the mediation bill that offers an opportunity to change that narrative by creating a structured framework through which disputes can be resolved before they become a crisis.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, darling.
We accept and recognize from our experiences that these disputes start small, starts in the family, in the community, more often than not between persons who know each other, and then without the appropriate intervention escalates to become criminal investigation, an emergency medical situation. Tensions escalate, and indeed people lose their lives, starting with very simple disputes. It is within that context, Madam Speaker, that we support the bill.
Thank you, darling.
I think it is important and indeed should have existed
need some gift, you know,
for a long time, but there's no time like now.
Parliament.
I want to just reference a few sections, Madam Speaker. Section 60, Clause 2 and Section 61.2 promotes intervention through community, family, and domestic mediation.
Taurus, baby.
And this is where my focus
16 seconds left, people. Drop some sniper shots and give them.
Tend to address
sniper shots
some of these issues
sniper shots
from a health perspective. So we have nearly 5,000 health officers, whether they are vector control workers, destroying mosquito breeding sites, or community health aides checking with the aged person in a household, whether they take their medication or giving them support, or the public health nurse or doctor. But we also have a mechanism under mental health, the Problem Plus program that trains community leaders to support mental health issues. And mental health is also a big cause of violence between individuals at the level of community. And so we have started to address that, and so we are interested to be supported by this bill to become legislation, because wherever there can be integration to support that, it would add critical value to managing cordial relations in the community between families or friends, as the case may be. And the bill through Section 60, Clause 2 and Section 61 promotes that type of intervention, which means that health can play a role in this regard. Section 62.1, the bill empowers the minister to make regulations for the implementation of community mediation, while Section 61.1a and 62a and c empowers the mediation board to make rules governing domestic and family mediation measures. These provisions, Mr. Speaker, facilitates the development of accessible dispute resolution mechanisms within communities, enabling conflicts to be addressed by trained and impartial mediators before they escalate into confrontation, police involvement, or litigation.
So what's the recommendation?
Section 61.3, Madam Speaker, we support. Clause 3, encouraging voluntary participation and cooperation, pursuant to 61.3, where the bill promotes consensual dispute resolution by allowing parties to engage in constructive dialogue and work collaboratively towards mutually acceptable outcomes rather than have solutions imposed on them. In other words, there is a basis through this legislation, this bill, where collaboration can be established, cooperation can be established to address and resolve some of the dispute. Interestingly too, is that the bill does not dismiss access to the courts where necessary if mediation at the level of the community fails. And Section 42.2 and 42.3 reserves that right or preserves that right, Madam Speaker. The other section that is worth noting, which health focuses on significantly, is Section 50 to 54, which speaks to confidentiality in resolving disputes. Health data is highly confidential. We spend a lot of time ensuring that it is preserved, that type of information. And the bill clearly outlines in this section
Switzerland
the
versus Colombia,
confidentiality
0-0
of
half
information.
time.
And the final section, Mr. Speaker, 48.2, enabling court enforcement of agreements, is also worth noting, because to the extent that the bill becomes law and a resolution is agreed on, this agreement is enforceable by law. And that gives teeth to community-based intervention and community-based resolution. And from a public health standpoint, what it means, Mr. Speaker, is that we can in fact attempt to address those issues at the community level. So, Mr. Speaker, that is my contribution to this bill. We think that from a public health perspective, it is important. It adds value to the work that we do at the level of communities, and it offers another buffer, another important intervention to reduce the potential for domestic violence, which creates added pressure on our public health system. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
Congo buffer, you need a Jesus Christ, and you can't stay there. That hunger buffer you need. Can I let go demons in our country and expect you not to have violence? Can I set altar all over a place and expect you not have violence? Some people are mad people, man. Fully done.
All right, so hi, it's nice to have you, Sister Carla.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
We have a small intervention here, ladies and gentlemen. It's a bit quiet in the room, waiting on them. Welcome to everybody on BOLO TBV. Welcome those on BOLO V&R 2.0. Yeah, big up on yourself, people from BOLO V&R on TikTok. The word is love. Can we increase the tops, ladies and gentlemen? We need some more tops over there, man. I think we should have been at least 30K already. We just at 10K. Oh, then change speaker.
Anybody from the opposition? I mean, they indicate tongue time. A member from Centersville Northeastern.
Oh, me definitely have to something like this. Me have to record this. So after 5 press, I try to get me on for the annual report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on this side, we welcome the mediation bill and approach this debate today with a view to actually see how best we can contribute towards strengthening the bill. And I see the member from Northeastern St. Andrew looking at me quite keenly. And so I wish to make it clear, Mr. Speaker, that our intent and our approach this afternoon is not to obstruct, but rather to construct or reconstruct in some cases. Mr. Speaker, we understand and we share the view and the vision articulated by the Minister. We agree that mediation is indeed an ideal course of action to heal the wounds that divide our society. We note that this bill actually goes extremely far, not just deals with mediation here at the local level, but also encompasses international mediation. Against that background, it is important that we view this bill, Mr. Speaker, with a critical eye and to see how best we can lend our various expertise into making this bill as robust and strong as we possibly can. And so against that background, I trust that
me just need a dark shirt so people can see chat.
Be minded to view my suggestions and my recommendations in the spirit in which it is intended, Minister. And I start with the interpretation clause of the bill. At page 4, clause 2 speaks about... Forgive me, Mr. Speaker. Clause 2 speaks about an individual who is habitually resident in Jamaica being permitted to access mediation under this particular bill. And I'm referring to the section that defines domestic mediation. Domestic mediation is actually defined as relating to a dispute arising out of a legal relationship where a party is habitually resident in Jamaica, amongst other things. My suggestion is that we should amend this particular clause to substitute ordinarily resident instead of habitually resident. And my position, Mr. Speaker, is very simple. In legal terminology, as the Minister would know, the test to establish whether an individual is habitually resident in Jamaica is a much stricter legal test that needs to be satisfied, as opposed to where an individual is simply required to be ordinarily resident. And the truth is we have a number of Jamaicans who divide their year into living here in Jamaica for part of the year and another part in another jurisdiction. By this definition, we would be precluding and excluding those categories of Jamaicans from being able to benefit from this act, or rather from this bill, because we are insisting that they must be habitually resident in Jamaica. And so my suggestion, Mr. Speaker, is that the word habitually resident be amended to instead reflect ordinarily resident. And that can be carried over into a similar provision at page 5, clause B, which also makes reference to habitual residents. My rationale is the same. Secondly, at clause 11.2, I'm not sure if there was an oversight or if it is that we intend to embark on a course that is being pursued by some more modern or advanced democracies. But I note that we have created a summary offense at clause 11.2, but the penalty is only stated as being a fine. It doesn't include what should happen in default of payment. And we do understand that not everybody will have the funds to pay $1 million. And so I'm of the view, Mr. Speaker, that it is good practice, Minister, and we've traditionally done this in our legislation where the default prison term is actually included in the specific act. And so my suggestion is that we should we should make a decision as to whether we are going to be consistent, because in the other provisions I note where there is provision for a fine, a maximum fine of $1 million, in default, 6 months. Here at 11.2, there is no provision for what should happen in the event that the fine is not or cannot be paid. So my suggestion is that that clause also be amended just to include what should happen in default of payment. At clause 12.1a, it speaks to eligibility to become a mediator. And I note that in order to qualify to be registered as a mediator, one needs to have attained the minimum age of 21 years old. I'm of the view that in this modern dispensation, that age limit could appropriately be reduced to 18. And the reason for that is very simple. And it's not just because some of us are more mature at 18 than some 21-year-olds are, but it is about equality before the law. And I note when I look at the entire bill, there is a schedule, Mr. Speaker, the 4th schedule actually allows for mediators qualified in other countries to be allowed to practice as mediators here, even if they are below 18 or under whatever age they're allowed to practice that in their country, they can come and practice in Jamaica. And at the same time, you would have Jamaicans who would not be able to practice as mediators because they have not attained that age. So it's a matter of equality before the law. And also, if we are looking at seeing how best we can assist, especially those younger ones with employment opportunities, this is a nice way to transition them into formal employment. And so my suggestion and recommendation is that we reduce the age from 21 years old to 18 years old. And finally, and I've given this one some thought, but I am hopeful that we might be bold and transformational. One of the biggest challenges that we've had in the justice system centers around the backlog. And yes, we appreciate the strides that the Chief Justice, the courts, and indeed you as Minister, forgive me, and indeed the Minister has actually done in bringing our numbers down, but we're still not where we need to be. We still have a 54% case backlog as it relates to civil court cases. My concern, Mr. Speaker, is that this bill provides that once a mediation agreement is signed, one party has to go back before the court to apply for it to become a binding court order, so to speak. My view is that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There is ample precedent in our neighbors in the Eastern Caribbean, for example, where they have an automatic conversion model that allows for once a mediation agreement is signed, it is automatically converted into a final order issued out of the court. So there's no need to formally go back before the court, apply for it to get that particular status. It automatically converts upon registering the mediation agreement in court. In other words, all you have to do is file it in the registry. There's a specific registry designated for mediation agreements. Just like you have probate registries, etc., you have a mediation registry, an expedited registry. Once you file the mediation agreement in that registry, it automatically takes on the legal weight of a final binding court order. That means that individuals don't have to go back before the court if there is a breach of the mediation agreement. It means that you're not contributing to the backlog and you're actually seeking and implementing ways to speed up justice. And so, against that background, those are my brief suggestions.
If you're a woman in business, it's time to go bigger.
Your ambition is calling, and her
Contributing to the backlog, and you're actually seeking and implementing ways to speed up justice. And so Against that background, those are my brief suggestions for the improvement of this bill, and I hope that this House will give due consideration. Thank you.
Member from St. Andrew. Member from St. Andrew Western.
Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate the Minister and his team for finally bringing this piece of legislation to the House. Because when the Arbitration Act was brought in 2017, I think, I thought that shortly thereafter there would have been the submission of the Mediation Act. It has been quite some time, and I believe that there is the need for international mediation, especially in the area of commercial matters, cross-border commercial matters. The Arbitration Act really relating to the New York Convention that addresses arbitration in a particular way. The mediation is a part of it. But more generally, I wondered, Minister, I didn't see, it wasn't clear what the interaction will be between the reform in arbitration and the mediation, because we're looking at alternative dispute resolution. And I wonder if there isn't an opportunity to include in that mediation, conciliation, and arbitration, because they're part of a spectrum of alternative dispute resolution that we are seeking to reform in Jamaica. And it's not clear to me what the relationship is. Okay, but yeah, if you could point that out, because it's not very clear to me what that would be. Because I think conciliation, there is, if you don't address it in this way that include conciliation, then issues like labor relations and conciliation proceedings in labor relation, there could be some lack of clarity around that. The other matter I'd want to comment on is really the enforcement provision for confidentiality and enforceability, because the point I think the Minister addressed when he spoke about community mediation, it's even of greater need if you're talking about trans-border commercial matter, because there you have to have strong confidentiality clauses for persons to be incentivized, especially. But the relationship I'm talking about between conciliation and mediation, arbitration, because it's one continuum, and we're trying to incorporate alternative dispute settlement as one mechanism. So I don't know if that was thought through and how that is addressed specifically and decided on. All right? But I believe that this is necessary, particularly in the area of commercial matter, trade, investment matters. The cross-border settlement, the Singapore Convention is now proven. I think there's a track record there that we can follow. My other concern is really the training. I know we have done some work and we have some institutions already set up. I think the two the Mediation Center and one JICA, International IAIC, they're really part of the Mediation Center. But what about the training of mediators as opposed to arbitrators? And I know we've done some work in arbitration, but I think we'll need a deeper bench of mediator to address that. But I think overall, I think it's a long overdue step, and I think it will enhance the environment for international dispute resolution in Jamaica and the ecosystem for overall alternative dispute resolution. Thank you.
Michelle.
Member from St. Anne's South. Eastern.
Look how Parliament are run good to them, man.
Mr. Speaker, I was at Sabbath school and they read from Matthew 18, verses 15 to 17, which actually sets out a process for mediation. At first, you don't get satisfaction from talking to the one who offends you. You talk to someone else, you go to the church, and then you find a neutral party. So mediation is as old as the Bible, we could argue. And we do want to preserve that traditional practice. However, when we look at the bill, clause 9, it says you should not practice mediation if you're not registered. And so it makes me wonder then if the real intent here is more around professional mediation, because 9B speaks to about payment. Hence, I would suggest, Minister, that we consider revisiting the objects so that object A, 3A, which says regulate the conduct of mediation, be reworded to speak to the regulation of the conduct of professional mediation. And in so doing, we are able to allow the traditional practices, and in the way that the Minister of Health spoke about the role, for example, of the CHAs, that would be allowed, right? They would not be violating the law when it becomes law if they're doing so. So that's my my suggestion here, that we have another look at object 3A and consider narrowing it to professional mediation.
Member from St. Andrew Southern.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I join with the comments made by the member for St. Andrew Western on the benefits of encouraging international mediation being conducted in Jamaica. In the same way that when the arbitration legislation was brought here a few years ago, I strongly endorsed it as a simple and coherent code for arbitration in Jamaica, which was consistent with the aspirations of those who wanted Jamaica to become an international center for arbitration. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that happen yet, but the law that we have on arbitration is, in my view, a very good law, and it provides an excellent legislative platform for that to emerge if other forms of support for such a center are created. And similarly, in the area of mediation, I think there are opportunities to do that as well. So that aspect of it, I'm very comfortable with. What I'm not so comfortable with is the idea of regulating mediation generally in Jamaica, domestic mediation generally in Jamaica. Regulation comes with costs for those who are regulated. There are fees that have to be paid, there are processes that have to be complied with, there are enforcement costs if it's going to make any kind of sense, and so on. It isn't clear to me what mischief or imperative there is for bringing the practice of mediation domestically into that regulated arena. We've had mediation operating certainly in the court system, mandatory mediation in the court system for civil matters for many years now. And that hasn't, as far as I'm aware, as a former minister of justice, thrown up any need to regulate mediation activities, perhaps. And then I thought what we would be trying to do is encourage more mediation in the parish courts, including in the criminal matters, which would help to relieve some of the caseload burden from those courts, and is in keeping with the overall thrust through child diversion, restorative justice. You know, it's all part of a kind of strategy to encourage other forms of settlement of disputes other than through trial of matters. And I know that's something that you endorse. So I am mindful, for example, of what happened when the former Minister of Finance brought legislation here which sought to and has brought corporate services and trust services under the FSC. So you now have to be licensed by the Financial Services Commission to provide corporate services or trust services. That was never the case before. The effect of that has been that many law firms no longer offer those services. They have completely withdrawn from those services because the costs and burdens of operating in an FSC-regulated environment, those are excessive and onerous to their practice of law, which is already regulated by the General Legal Counsel for anti-money laundering and other such activities which we know are very sensitive matters for Jamaica. So in light of that history, where we have seen the effect of imposing new regulation on persons that were not previously regulated, sometimes doubling up in the case of lawyers who are regulated by the GLC, and if they want to form a company for a client, they have to be registered by the FSC, licensed by the FSC to do that, which is, many practitioners feel is excessive and onerous and unnecessary. So from that perspective, I'm very wary of imposing any kind of regulatory burden on domestic mediation practices. I think that would be counterproductive if it was to act as a disincentive for people to participate in mediation services. And while I do think there's importance to having persons who are mediating legal disputes, which are under the jurisdiction of the court, to have some certification, as you've pointed out, and that is already the case, imposing a new regulatory regime on domestic mediation took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting it when you brought it here. I thought this would have been really focused on being the complement of the arbitration legislation that we have, which really has set the platform for Jamaica to become an international dispute resolution center, with arbitration and now mediation being another arrow in the quiver, so to speak, which would be an enhancement of the overall array of services that can be provided to companies here and abroad and cross-border transactions and so on. So those are my thoughts. I have a concern because I've seen the effect, the chilling effect, the disincentive effect that introducing regulation in areas which have historically not been regulated and aren't really crying out for it from any domestic needs can have on their willingness to provide those services. And I'm concerned that we may have that impact in relation to mediation.
Very important point made by the leader of the opposition.
Member from St. Andrews South, Western.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thanks. Mr. Speaker, I had wanted to make just a few comments in relation to this bill. And I am grateful for the comments from the member from St. Andrews South, because it is akin to some of the concerns that I have. So I know that for several years we have been encouraging a culture of mediation in Jamaica. And that includes all other kinds of alternative dispute resolution processes, as well as restorative justice and so on, as you very well know. I would hate to see, certainly I was hoping that the bill itself, apart from the certification and stuff that's required, would actually speak to building that culture of mediation. We have done a fantastic job across administrations, for example, with peace and loving schools, which is really what it's also about, this culture that we are building. I was hoping that we were conscious that there are individuals right now who are trained but not necessarily certified mediators who play a significant role in several communities whether it is in church, as the member from Southeast St. Anne's said, or in communities. And for what they are doing, they certainly would not need to be certified, since they have absolutely no interest in participating in the court system. Because of how Jamaica is, I am fearful that some of these individuals who are doing good and mean well might at some point run into a foul of the law because they are practicing. Yes? So, no, and so, right. And so I want to make sure that these safeguards are there. Because you know how it is. You know, police come and see a couple youths doing a session and they say, no, come on, Parliament passed a law, you have to be certified, where's your certification? So I want to make sure that we are also mindful that it's not just in the courts that these things take place. They take place in communities, and persons who are engaged in those activities need to feel comfortable and that they are also protected as we move to professionalize mediators.
Member from Hanover Western.
Mr. Speaker, I want to endorse the comments made by my colleagues. I wish to comment on section 32(1), where it speaks to when mediation commences. What I'm not seeing is for court-referred mediation, whether or not there's a time period for those to be completed. And mediation for me should never become another waiting room in the justice system. And so I think it requires some specificity as to when, especially for court-referred mediations, when this should complete. This, the legislation really is intended to reduce delays and backlogs. And if you don't have a specified time, then there will be the tendency for it to continue without an end. To continue without an end. And so it should establish clear expectations of timelines within the legislation. That's my contribution.
Member from Trelawney Southern.
Thank you. Yes, if I can. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I first of all want to thank the members on the other side for their contributions, valuable contributions, and a number of them can be incorporated as we get into community stage, because indeed it does appear that there is generally full and good support for this bill. I rise too to support the bill, and I want to pause to commend the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs for his stewardship in bringing this important piece of legislation before the House at this time. The bill, Mr. Speaker and members, is another demonstration of the government's unwavering commitment to building a justice system that is more accessible, more efficient, and more responsive to the needs of our people. As a Minister of State, I have had the opportunity to witness the ministry's continued efforts to improve access to justice through innovation, through reform, and through the expansion of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. And this bill represents another important milestone in this journey. Members, justice is not measured solely by the outcome of a case. It is also measured by whether our ordinary Jamaican citizens can resolve their disputes fairly, promptly, affordably, and with dignity. As an attorney practicing for many years in rural Jamaica, I know that litigation can be lengthy, costly, and emotionally taxing. While the courts will always remain indispensable in the administration of justice, not every dispute needs to end up in the courtroom. In many instances, the better outcome is the one that parties themselves can create through respectful dialogue facilitated by an impartial mediator. This, members, is what the bill seeks to do. It allows parties to move beyond positions that each person has and to focus on the real interest that they have in the discussion. It encourages understanding rather than hostility. It encourages cooperation rather than confrontation, and lasting solutions rather than prolonged conflict. In the Jamaican context, this is especially significant. We see the value of mediation most clearly in disputes that affect the ordinary Jamaican man and woman every single day. And I want you to just consider, for example, a boundary dispute between neighbors or even between members of the same family over a parcel of land. And that is a daily occurrence in our rural courts. These are among the most common matters that come before the courts, particularly where you don't have proper documentation. Sometimes the documentation is limited, sometimes it is non-existent at all. Or you have in the courts a disagreement over a fence. Your fence is on my piece of land, a right of way, or where one property ends and the other property begins, and that can remain before the courts for years. We put it off because this one traveling, we put it off because the paper's not here, and it goes on and on. During that time, parties have to incur a lot of legal costs. I know people talk about costs now with mediation, but believe me, they're paying it in legal costs when you have to have this matter linger in the courts. And while they pay the costs, the relationships deteriorate. And what began sometime as a single disagreement, you come over my fence line, grows often into deep and lasting hostility. So it is through mediation, however, that those parties can come. They can sit around a table with an impartial mediator, openly discuss the issues, examine the surveys and any little piece of paper them have, or bring in brother or sister who was around at the time and can help, and work towards a practical solution that they themselves have crafted. They can own the discussion. It is not a judge at the top that dictates what happened. They work it out for themselves. So instead of having years of litigation, they may resolve the matter in weeks and months. Instead of exhausting their resources on prolonged legal proceedings, they hold on to their money. More importantly, instead of destroying relationships between neighbors or family members, they preserve the peace and goodwill that are so essential to our communities. So, Mr. Speaker and members of the House, that is really the true promise of mediation
and what it is that the minister and the ministry is trying to bring here to us in this country to help our citizens. It is not simply just resolving a dispute. It is about restoring relationships, reducing hostility, and allowing our Jamaicans to move forward with dignity and respect. It doesn't matter what the disagreement is. We ought to learn and encourage each other to move forward with dignity and with respect. So, the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs have long recognized that improving access to justice requires more than simply building more courtrooms or appointing more judges. It requires providing our citizens with effective alternatives that are timely, affordable, and centered on the needs of our people who are seeking justice. The bill strengthens that vision for our country. By encouraging greater use of mediation, we can reduce unnecessary litigation, ease pressure on our courts, shorten the time taken to resolve disputes, and allow the judicial resources to be directed towards matters that truly require judicial determination. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, mediation will empower our people. It gives individual ownership of the resolution process and enables them to craft practical solutions that work for their particular circumstances. Not a law that is set there that they have to fit in. They will discuss and find some way to resolve their differences. So, members, I want to use this opportunity to encourage all Jamaicans to embrace mediation as the first option wherever it is appropriate so to do, and to encourage all of us, but I don't think I need to encourage us. I feel that we do, all of us, despite the various suggestions, and there are suggestions that are made that we can take into account at committee stage. But I do believe that all of us as members support this bill. Choosing mediation is not about avoiding justice. It is about pursuing justice in a manner that is constructive, collaborative, and forward-looking. It demonstrates a willingness to listen, to understand, and to find common ground. These are qualities that strengthen not just our justice system, but our democracy and our society as a whole. So as we continue to advance constitutional and the justice sector reform, legislation such as this bill reminds us that justice is ultimately about serving people. It is about ensuring that every Jamaican has meaningful access to fair, effective, and timely dispute resolution. Mr. Speaker and members of this House, as I said, I'm confident that this bill will make a lasting contribution to the administration of justice in Jamaica and to the promotion of a more peaceful, resilient, and cohesive society. I therefore recommend and ask that you pass this bill.
House Leader. Member from St. James West Central.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill entitled the Mediation Act. Having read the bill in its entirety, I believe that it is a welcome step in our alternative dispute resolution framework. The bill is well thought out and it is clearly written. I have taken note of concerns about overregulation. And while, as a general rule, I think in our jurisdiction there is a tendency to overregulate, this bill does not fall in that category. A requirement for registration or licensing without more does not equate to overregulation. I think much will depend on the rules that are to be made, the regulations. And I have every reason to believe that when those rules are made, that they will be facilitatory instead of restrictive. Mr. Speaker, providing for time frame for the conduct of any matter is something that always finds favor. In respect of mediation, I believe that it could be a little difficult because all matters must depend on their own circumstances, complexity, parties. And so it may be challenging to provide for the time frame within which the mediation is to be completed. But the bill otherwise sets out time frame within which actions are to be taken, and I think it is quite commendable. In addition to what all that is provided, I'm particularly taken with Part 9 of the bill, which makes provision for facilitated contract renegotiation. And it provides that a mediator may be appointed by parties to a contract to serve as a facilitator for facilitated contract renegotiation. It is such a welcome addition to the legal framework because we have so many examples of the need for renegotiation of contract, which would avoid breach of contract, delay, and everything else that comes with a genuine inability to perform a contract as initially agreed or negotiated. This bill binds the crown, and it is my hope that the government, when passed into law, will take advantage of this provision. Of course, Minister, you recognize that the prescribed forms will have to be done as soon as possible to ensure that once the bill is passed into law, the provisions can be utilized. But it is a forward step and a welcome step, and it has my support.
Mr. Speaker, I'm planning to...
Whoa, what's that? I just built a budgeting app in Base 44. Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible. Nina can't code. Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
Nice. So you're saying we can all build apps now?
Yeah.
I'm on lunch.
I gotta make a call.
I'll be
in my
right
office. Just built an inventory tracker.
Protein calculator.
Book share an app.
A workflow manager that
Tracks who still owes for the group lunch.
Crash duty schedule.
Since no one seems to care.
Just built a
I just
performance
created a goal
manager.
tracking system.
We built the same thing, didn't we?
Yep. Can this thing manage contacts? Is it SOC compliant?
I want to animate this graph. Create a party planner.
Profesor de español.
An inter-office dating app.
For dogs. For office dogs. You know what I mean? And also that we should put at 11.2 or in lieu of payment 6 months. I don't know how that slipped me, so the CPC, I was in contact and somehow we will address that at the committee stage. I don't agree with you though that the age should be reduced to 18. I think a mediator should be someone experienced. In fact, at one time I thought it should be 25, but age of majority 21. So I would say, let us leave it at 21, okay? Not a problem. But you see, and let me get straight to that point. both the member from Southeast St. Anne and also the member from South and Southwest speak of regulation and whether or not certification means we're going to regulate mediators. The truth of the matter is that we want everybody to be a mediator. When you see a quarrel, when you see a dispute, I hope people take the opportunity to learn about the principles, practice, and the strategies of mediation. So that whether it is in here, whether it is on the street, if the opportunity of a dispute arises, anybody should really, if they know little about mediation, assist. So that the idea, as the member from Southeast St. Anne pointed out, mediation is time immemorial. Pastors do that counseling. You do that in the schools, the guidance council bring parties together. These are forms of mediation, and what we're hoping is that this mediation will promote it fully so that persons can actually be trained as mediators even if they don't want to become certified. So indeed, the member from South St. Andrew, I have encouraged persons to learn about mediation. So I got the DRF, for example, 7 years ago, to train 600 JPs. None of them really want to be practicing mediators, but I wanted them to know about mediation. It's the same as I've said, which I started this week. I want about 20 persons in the Administrator General to be trained in mediation, because parties come there and quarrel and want to fight inside the office. So they will be mediators, they will be trained, they may not want to be certified, but at the end of the day, they would at least understand how they can practice mediation. And I hope all of us in here will learn about the practice of mediation and how it can help to really ease and solve disputes. Where the regulation will be, member, is those persons especially who are going to charge and those who are referred by the Supreme Court or the parish courts. So you need for those mediators to be certified firstly, and we have a registry of them. And if community mediation takes off, or where business places have a problem and they want a trained, certified mediator to assist within the business, then they can usually look at the registry or get from a mediator service provider. At the moment, we only have one, the DRF, but we are hoping there will be others who can find a certified mediator to be able to assist the parties, and they can charge. So what that bill in particular does for the member from Southeast St. Anne, you can practice mediation, and everybody should. But if you're going to charge, you must be certified and registered. So that is the only regulation where persons who charge, they must be certified and on the registry. Anyone else who wants to practice mediation can do so, but they must charge. Okay, that's the difference. Now, in relation to my friend from West St. Andrew, arbitration has not taken off, but as the member from South St. Andrew says, we really want Jamaica to be an arbitration mediation center, just like Singapore. And you have combinations of mediation and arbitration. For instance, you have MedArb, where the parties, once they agree to mediation, they can actually say, if we can't come to a settlement, they sign before and agree that the mediator can then be an arbitrator. So the arbitrator can make a decision. But that is with the consent of the parties. And so you have various combinations, MedArb, ArB-Med. If in an arbitration you can't get along, you ask that the parties really try mediation before anything. But the essence of mediation is a win-win for the parties. The idea is that the parties can talk out the issues and come to a settlement that is satisfactory to both of them. Because if it is not satisfactory to both of them, then they don't have to sign anything. You move on. That's the end of it. You can go to court after that. And what the law provides is that if you participate in mediation, and as the member from South Trelawney say, try it before you start an action in court. Because if you try it and you succeed, you save a lot of costs going to court. But if you fail, nothing in the mediation can be brought up in court. All of that can be dealt with. And so my friend from Minister Tufton has pointed out that we need more of this community mediation to keep families from fighting one another, neighbors from fighting one another. Huge amount of domestic violence, and actually violence, is because people can't settle their differences. And this is why, colleagues across this parliament, we all have to think about how we can promote this mediation. Because if we do a lot of domestic disputes, not even so much commercial, because they can settle their contracts and what have you. And we urge them to use it. But the domestic disputes, the homes, unfortunately, are becoming war zones. And we need for these families to really seek help. And we're hoping with restorative justice, victim services, and no mediation, parties have more access to services which can assist them. Now, the member from Hanover mentioned about time. Truth of the matter, you can't really set a time as to how long it should take. Most mediation now are done within a 1-2 hour period, but the truth of the matter is, it depends on the complexity of the matter. I suspect that there are complex matters that can take days. There are simple matters that can take an hour. Right? Extension, no. So one of the reasons also, members, why I want for the regulation to be there is that the Ministry of Justice have started 3 years ago to pay mediators. And it came about because when I urged the Chief Justice to urge the parish court judges to send people to mediation, he looked at me squarely and said, most of these litigants can't even afford bus fare. How can they afford a mediator? And the mediators were charging $5,000 for each side. So we started out 3 years ago paying each side $5,000, but now we are paying $10,000 each side if they go through the means test and they can't afford it. And we have moved over the last 3 years from 10 million, 13 million, and 2025, 50 million we paid out because mediation, over 4,000 mediation was done over the past fiscal year, and 80% of them were settled. And the mediators, when they saw the bill, they said, thank you, Mr. Chow, promote it more. These are the mediators who make it some good money. I mean, and the truth of the matter is that we want more persons to be trained in mediation. I was in touch with the head of the DRF. He says that there are about 17 trainers, and we want over the next year for these 17 or so trainers to be utilized in all the government departments. I will be asking the permanent secretaries to really pay so that every department have some mediators. You have more conflicts in these departments than you can imagine. And we want teachers, at least 4 or 5 teachers in every school to be trained in mediation. And we're not saying that they should be certified, but if they do the training, every MP can be trained. And, even if the Ministry of Justice assists in the payment, because for the GPs, they're voluntary service, and we pay for their training once they're interested in being trained. And I think this should be so across the island. So colleagues, this is a bill which took some time because we bounced it off what is happening in other countries, especially Singapore, and we really want it to be acted on. We really believe that if Jamaicans use mediation more, then Jamaica can become the peaceful and harmonious place it should be. So colleagues, I want to thank you and hope that when we return next week to sort out the minor changes as suggested by the member from Northeast, St. Elizabeth, we will just pass the bill next week. So thank you, members, for your support.
Mr. Speaker, in light of that, we ask that you suspend debate on the bill.
The request is on the floor for the suspension of the debate. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business this afternoon, and as such, we ask that the House be suspended for a date to be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
The request is on the floor that the House be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned.
Thanks for watching, guys. I didn't know they were gonna end so quickly. You see what happens when they just get to the business of the House and stop the foolishness? Yeah, that's what happens. So I'm gonna come back later on. 7:30 again, I'll be back, guys. We're gonna go through the annual report. There's some key things in there that I saw already, and I'm going to peruse. And I'm going to be back live at 7:30 p.m. All right? God bless you all. Thanks for your support. See you guys later. Big up on yourself. Later, TikTok. Thanks for the love and support, yeah?